Welcome back to Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming through a feminist lens. Today we are Alex, Jem and Matt, and we are here to talk about Hogwarts Legacy. So if this is not something you feel comfortable engaging with, we totally understand. If you don't want to watch or listen, that's fine. But we are going to be talking about that game today. Before we start, if you want to support us, you can also subscribe to our lovely Patreon. And there's a link in this corner somewhere, a QR code where you can subscribe, and we release a special Patreon-only episode once a month. So check it out. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to discuss Hogwarts Legacy, a game that has been in the headlines, it's fair to say, after its release earlier this month. Obviously, we can't talk about the game without talking about the infamous J.K. Rowling and her horrible bigoted views that she's been using her platform to promote over social media, and how our views obviously do not align with hers because they are bigoted and hateful and transphobic. So I guess first thing to start with would be our thoughts in general on, I guess, how we feel about the game and how we feel about people playing the game. And I will come out here and say I have bought the game and I'm playing it, and I have mixed feelings about that. And that's certainly something that I've been thinking about in preparation for this episode. But I want to obviously open up the floor and let you guys share your thoughts as well before I get into it. I can explain obviously why I've decided to play it, and that's completely my own decision, and I respect other people's decisions not to play it as well. Like, I completely understand why that would be the case. So if you guys wanted to share your thoughts, please feel free.
Shall I go?
Yeah, go for it, Jem.
Yeah, I think mixed feelings is probably the best way to describe this. I have sat down and thought about this long and hard over the last couple of days, and it's not. This isn't the first time that this issue has come up. So I think what I came down to was a fundamental thing, that this is a fundamental question around sort of morality and how we handle people who do things that we don't like and do things that are against society or against our view of how society should be. And I think, this is it's a big question, and there isn't an easy answer to it, I think. So I haven't bought the game, and it's not entirely down to any kind of moralistic stance or ethical position. It's mainly because I'm still playing The Last of Us 2, and I think that for me, I can leave it a good time and then see how it pans out, and then I suppose I'm fence sitting. I feel a bit bad about that. I'm fence sitting. I have a huge amount to say on this. I'm just conscious that I don't want to just spend like half an hour lecturing you all, but I have thought about this a lot, and I've got a lot of views on what are we trying to achieve by boycotting the game. What does that do for our trans sisters and brothers, and what does that do for people, the fight that's going on behind the scenes, and what's the best way to support everybody whilst, also living our lives, and where do we draw the line? How do we do all of that? I think it's a massive question. So I have no issues with the fact that you're playing it. I know you are a massive Harry Potter fan, and I am a big Harry Potter fan. I read all the books, loved them, loved the films, hate what J.K. Rowling has been saying. And yeah, I think it's really sad actually that she's kind of
It is, yeah.
such a ridiculous argument, and
Yeah.
such a so that she's taken such a crappy position. So
Yeah. Matt, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's very. It feels like it's a sort of it being painted as a bit of a litmus test for whether you're a trans ally or not. So that if someone plays this game to some trans people, that means that that's really bad and that you're not a true supporter. But so I disagree with litmus tests, the idea of it like that.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you're a true ally to trans people and you care about them and want to support them, even if a trans person was to say to you, Alex, oh, I can't believe you're playing this, I hate you, that won't stop you being a trans ally.
No.
It won't stop you coming on this platform. You wouldn't come here and say, you know what, we've been supportive and vocal and been allies on this podcast for 2.5 years, and a trans person said that they don't like me now. We're going to change the position of this podcast and be virulently anti-trans. Well, that's
just not going to happen. Anybody, is it? No.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think I've mentioned capitalism for quite a while, but last year I did an incredible union organising course, which is like a global course where there are thousands of organisers all over the world coming to do this online course about how you effectively organise in either the workplace or in society. And that if we think about what the goals are of trans people and their allies, it's to make their existence in society as effortless and celebrated as not a big deal as possible. That's the goal. And the reason we're not dealing with reasonable people when it comes to transphobic people, because the reason that trans people are being attacked is because they're a small marginalized community with very little power, and they can be scapegoated by corrupt politicians, and politicians are corrupted because of capitalism. And as long as we have corrupt politicians, they're going to need scapegoats for the meat grinder. And I think this Hogwarts Legacy is an excellent place to be. It means everyone's talking about trans rights now.
Yes, yeah.
So it's bringing notoriety to the issue. Whatever happens with this game is not going to. It's not going to be this isn't going to be the fulcrum of trans rights are either going to eventually be realised or it's going to be the doom of them. But the point of it is that we're all talking about it. And have either of you heard about the trans girl who was murdered a few days ago?
Yeah.
So
Brianna,
Brianna Gray. She was murdered, a young trans woman, and a sign of the times is that in all of the newspaper articles that I've read about her, they all respect her trans identity. No one goes, mentally ill boy convinced the girl murdered by confused young men. So the point is we're talking about it. And that's why I'm so glad that we're coming to have this conversation.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I think in terms of my playing the game, obviously I'm not 100% comfortable with some of my feelings around naturally J.K. Rowling, but like her associations with what is essentially a product of her ultimate making. But in terms of when you think about how the films were obviously a big influence for this game, I think a lot of the art direction and the styles and even the sound design, a lot of it's taken from like the David Yates era of the films, so films 5 to 8. So in a way, it's definitely a kind of celebration of not just this one creator. It's looking at the whole of the creative like output from filmmakers and all the other Harry Potter IP based things. It's not just the one person, it's the talents and hard work of an awful lot of people involved in making the game and in making the films, and like all of that combined into this one thing, which a lot of gamers and Harry Potter fans have essentially been waiting since childhood for. It is the perfect Harry Potter RPG, if you will. I haven't obviously finished the game. I'm about 15 hours in, more or less. I had a break from it today because it is one of those ones, as you know, with any type of new game, you get sucked in and it becomes difficult to stop playing. One of the reasons, I think one of my main reasons for wanting to play it is because that world, the Wizarding World, it kind of, in my head, it means, what it means to me is the relationships I formed at the times I was reading the books and watching the films growing up. So I bonded quite a lot with my sister over the books and the films, and we got much closer through that. Not just because of it, but it was one thing that we used to be able to build our relationship with each other. And also a lot of my friendship groups, obviously, being born in the time that we were, being the age that Harry goes to Hogwarts at the time the first film came out, pretty much all of my friend groups would have been keenly aware of Harry Potter, if not slightly obsessed with it growing up. And I think I'm looking at it in terms of those positive memories and those relationships that I've built and reflecting on that now, I guess, which in the short answer, I guess you could say, if you were nitpicking, would be nostalgia. But I don't want that to be like an excuse for buying it just to ignore what is obviously a very important and divisive issue for many, and I don't want to downplay that part of it. It's really difficult to talk about, and I know, like, obviously there's been so much conversation over it, and I think a lot of people are having these same sorts of feelings about it, where it just doesn't quite sit comfortably, even though it reminds them of all these wonderful positive things from their own time with the books and the films, because what you take from it is what it means to you and the relationships you build through it. There's also this tainted element now with J.K. Rowling and the views that she's expressing. So I don't know if that kind of explains my reasoning behind playing it. Like I said, I've got a lot of feelings about it, and I'm not sure I entirely can articulate them particularly well. But I'm happy to talk about my experience of the game so far a little later on. One thing that did catch my attention earlier in the week was a Gamer Rant article about, let me see, former Dragon Age voice actor who's done some voice acting for Hogwarts Legacy, it appears, Greg Ellis. And I wanted to particularly get your opinion on this, Gemma, as a Dragon Age fan. I don't know whether you knew much about Greg Ellis before this article.
No, I didn't. Which goes to show, I think, a lot that sometimes these things can move in very small circles, and within those circles, everyone knows what's going on. But beyond that, nobody has a clue. And I think one of the other, in that article, one of the other voice actors said that they didn't know anything about J.K. Rowling's opinions on and transphobia, which she denies. But I think, I don't know. I think it's the same issue. I mean, I think for me, so I think Matt hit the nail on the head when he was saying, we're talking about it. And so I think that we have to look at what are we trying to achieve by boycotting a game, for example, or sacking somebody for inappropriate behavior or offensive behavior. What are we trying to achieve? Because then we can get a better idea on how best to go about it. So I think there are two things that we're going to achieve. Firstly, we are not going to make a dent in J.K. Rowling's fortune, or her
ivory
position.
tower.
Exactly. We're not going to do that. She's not going to care whether we buy the game or not from a financial perspective. So that's not the issue. If everyone didn't buy the game, I know that's not going to happen, but if everyone didn't buy the game, then the games company and all the people that work for it and all of those people, they would be affected by it. But J.K. Rowling wouldn't. So who are we punishing in that scenario? However, if we didn't buy the game and they didn't make any money, then they would be likely to make changes on who they worked with and what they did in the future. So, for example, to take a positive example, we've seen an increase in female protagonists, both in games and in movies, and people of colour as well. So, there's been, and what we've seen is that when those people are in those positions, that everything still sells really well, or actually even better, it does really well. So we're seeing a capitalist motivation to be more diverse in movies and games. So there is definitely, and everyone didn't buy Hogwarts Legacy, then future decisions would take on board the behaviours of the originators. However, from the perspective of my love of Hogwarts would be dead then. The world of Harry Potter would be out the window because it would be a poison chalice. So there would be no more films, there would be no more games, there wouldn't, because there's no way to disentangle it from J.K. Rowling. That's one aspect. That's a very extreme scenario. So the other issue is that if what we want to do is encourage people to talk about the issue and to, just to be more, because we have to talk about it in order to normalize it. We have to talk about it in order to get over the concerns that some people raise about these things, and to understand what the things are that we need to think about, what the things are we need to worry about, and what the things are that we don't need to worry about. And so I think from that perspective, then you just need a few kind of key people to boycott the game, to talk about boycotting the game, and a bunch of other people to kind of come along and do it a little bit. And then everyone starts talking about it. So from now on, every article, every review, every evaluation of this game will at least have a reference to this issue, which means that it's racist. And I think there is a trans character in the game. I understand.
Yes.
So I think that's an example of how that's the issue has been acknowledged, and attempts have been made to try and reconcile that. So I think the final thing that I wanted to say about this is that so when we've got some like a voice actor who's an arse or whatever. That's not the issue here. If I was going to boycott a game completely, it would be because of the contents of the game. And I do understand that there is some problematic content in Hogwarts Legacy, because there's some anti-Semitism in there with regards to the goblins in the bank, and that's not an issue that I know a lot about, so I don't feel sort of comfortable to comment on it too much. But I know there are some other issues. But as far as I'm concerned, it's like, if you want to boycott a game because you're worried about the safety of women and girls, you know, or something like that, then go and boycott. I don't know. Well, I mean, there are lots of issues here, and I think people have to think about what they're trying to achieve with it. I suppose I think about it like I feel about vegans. No offense to any vegans, but I really respect vegans. I think they are awesome people doing an awesome thing for the world, actually. And I genuinely feel like they have every right to sit on their high horses and, feel very smug. But they're doing it so that I don't have to. There are other people. We all have to make other changes, because what they're doing is they're shifting the dial that bit further, and the rest of us now settle in the middle, which is a little bit closer to where we really need to be. And I think that's the thing. I think that, and I feel like that about people boycotting this game, that they're right to boycott it, that they do have the moral high ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, do you?
I completely disagree about vegans.
I thought you might.
Yeah. Though another thing from this fabulous organising course is that the way the bosses, the powerful, win is that they change the conversation to make everything about individual responsibility. So that, it's not the system at large, it's the voice actor, it's J.K. Rowling. Whereas the problems stem from the system that we are trying to game here, that says that these individuals are the problem. It's not capitalism, it's not patriarchy, it's these individuals, it's this small selection of trans people doing it. And I agree, like I say this a lot, that the way that this is, that the developers and the studio have been dealing with it, which is they don't full-throated go, we support J.K. Rowling, this is her brilliance, and do all propaganda for her. They just want, push her away, just distance herself, just because they want the money. They want the money. The studio want the money. And the fact that they think they're going to make more money by distancing themselves from J.K. Rowling shows that things are going in a better direction rather than going backwards in this case.
Yeah.
And thinking about, whenever I see this a lot, like when I look at American politics, when you have the left wing come up, they get superstars, proper superstars coming out to support them. But then the right wing, they just find these B-list celebrity lunatics to come out. But when you look at who's on J.K. Rowling's side and who's on our side, you get the voice actor of Cullen in Dragon Age, who no one's heard of until this. You get J.K. Rowling, big deal. Yeah, you get Graham Linehan, Father Ted, IT Crowd, hasn't done anything for a while. But then when you look at our side, you get Pedro Pascal. You get all of his friends. And and then you look at all, like, the bigger streamers, like Alana Pierce.
Yeah.
They're massively vocal advocates. And just we have the better people. The other side just has more wealth and resources to pour on it. And also, I watched the new Black Panther film the other day, and that is the future, because it's mostly women and black women, and they are all very dark-skinned black women, which is the the level of representation there is insane. And also, I watched the Super Bowl the other day, which is just absolutely, it was epic. And it was the first time that two black quarterbacks have played each other in the Super Bowl.
Oh wow!
So, and I'll come on to another bit later.
Yeah.
But yeah, the money is in diversity. This Super Bowl, I think, is the most watched one ever, and so that's good. And so yeah, hopefully this is the kicking and screaming of a dying hatred. But
I think that is true. I think it definitely does feel like it's, you know, that these people who the transphobic people are, you know, as a dying breed, that they are on their way out. So I think it's just how much damage are they going to do in the meantime on that, you know.
Yeah.
And it's devastating because J.K. Rowling is as privileged as it's possible to be. She has earned her way there with the money she has, but she is as untouchable by the risks and dangers that the average woman on the street faces. And the system gets us to oppress ourselves by getting us to fight each other. And there is not 99.9% of the women who are transphobic, they are no safer from male violence than anyone else. And again, it's the focusing on individual things. Like, the problem isn't trans women in bathrooms and bathrooms being a safe place. It's that, like, the vast majority of women are murdered by someone who knows them, who is close to them.
Yeah.
And so the violence that happens against women is almost always perpetrated by a man. But look, the violence that is perpetrated upon other men is also perpetrated by men, which means that the problem is men being violent. And we have to look at why are men violent?
But we don't have to, because we don't want to. So why don't we look at trans women instead and blame them? And this is one of the things and this is what I was like going off. I got confused, got my arguments confused. But this is one of the things that has been really bugging me over the last few months, especially with what we're seeing with the gender recognition, self-ID and things like that going on up in Scotland, is that, you know, there's so many men on the TV over the last few weeks and the radio banging on about protecting women and girls, when, you know, the recent high-profile cases where women have been murdered, their families have been murdered. I mean, the awful case of the teacher in Surrey and her daughter, and this is male violence, and they're standing up there. These politicians are standing up there and talking about how they're going to protect women and girls, and not actually from the threat, which is men. It is not trans women. And I think, you know, it's clearly, you know, a distraction tactic. Can't see it as anything other than that, either to distract us so that we're so busy infighting that we don't get anything done, or to just distract us from the fact that actually, yes, all men, sorry Matt, but you know, certainly all women.
I'll say one last thing, in that I am worried that the RMT union and their strike is going to fail badly, because they're not thinking big enough, and that there isn't we're in the stage of capitalism and global warming and everything where we need to be we need to think bigger, because we've been taught our entire lives that you need to be polite and ask by little bits and be reasonable. Whereas what the wealthiest people want is as extreme and unreasonable as possible. They want everything. They want absolutely everything. That's what we're fighting. So we need to demand everything back. And what they're doing is still doing, oh, we'll do one strike and then we'll do another strike. We'll follow the laws of doing it. Whereas what they could do is just go, right, we're not going to work for a month. Arrest me if we're breaking the law, because that's what it's going to take. Yeah.
Who knew we could get onto such broad topics? That's why I love